What's up, everybody? We got to check some right here. I'm having some serious issues tonight. I don't know what is going on with all this mess, but we're going to check it right quick. I hope y'all are doing good. This is a rare Monday show. But we come up here to talk a little bit about the state of the Carolina Panthers, where they're at. And right now it looks like everything is good. If y'all can still hear me on Facebook and everything, jump in the comments, let us know. Stream started acting really weird. Now it's showing everything's fine. So I don't know. But we have a special guest tonight. We'll go ahead and dive into that. My buddy Den from the Keep PounDEN Podcast is up here tonight. Den, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Not much, dude. How's it going, guys? Nice to see you for once versus just calling in.
Yeah. It is kind of strange to see you on the other line there, buddy. But then it's safe to say right now, Carolina Panthers are on a pretty bad skid, you know, and this actually feels worse. And I guess maybe it's because of the way the season started, probably, but this actually feels worse than past losing seasons under Ron Rivera with Cam Newton and all.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you firsthand, being there on the road. Maybe I'm the jinx because I'm 1-5 on the road with these guys. But,
yeah.
Yeah, you know, I saw a tweet today. The Panthers are the most volatile team in the NFL. People can start to understand why I'm ecstatic one year and then absolutely go insane the next year because they just can't put it together 2 years in a row. But yeah, I don't think we've seen it this bad in a while as far as coaches getting fired and getting gashed for 52 points.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because, you know, you start off 6-2, now you fall to 6-6, and you felt like you got a new owner this year, everything was going great. You felt good with the offensive moves. You hit the draft, what seemed to be pretty well. And so far, for the most part, those picks have worked out, but everything started coming to a skid the last few weeks. It's been frustrating. And, of course, today, guys, in case you missed it, Rivera did fire defensive line coach Brady Hoke and cornerback coach Jeff Imamura. I hope I'm saying his name right. And
he's heard that name, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, said.
Yeah, right. I'm a Mura. I don't know. I just think of, like, the old Falcons coach.
They called F.A. Obada Ife Obada at Raymond James Stadium. So you're at least not doing – you're doing better than them at least.
No kidding. And, of course, Rivera, we saw this in the Tampa game already, and we kind of figured this was coming, but Rivera has taken over defensive play calling. He made that announcement today as well, taking it over from Eric Washington. But Eric Washington will be going back to the defensive line and really the front seven coaching job is that. And I ultimately think that's why the Brady Hoke firing happened. And this is really – I think this is where it should be. I know some people were saying, why is Eric Washington even still here, this and that. And my opinion, Dan, you may or may not agree with me. Billy may or may not. I'm not sure. We haven't really talked about it. But I think Washington needs to be here. He's led some of the Panthers' best fronts in franchise history. And one of the reasons he got this job and they wanted to keep him was because of the players' attitude towards him and to help, you know, I think Jordan Rodriguez mentioned it in the presser today, to keep some of that stability going through 3 different defensive coordinators coming into this season.
Yeah, I mean, Rivera mentioned it today. You know, Washington's done such a great job, and he wants him to stay up front. You know, he didn't actually come out and say it, but from his words, I put together that he's not sure if Washington can really handle the secondary. And actually, there's a few plays in that game that they're really out of place. Actually, on that pass interference to Jackson, Mike Adams was completely lost. You're seeing the corners play way off. So from what Ron mentioned, he's going to be taking the back end of that and wants Washington just to focus on the front 4 or front 7. And, you know, it's tough when it comes to the front line. Like, yeah, you can call stunts and things like that, but those are players that it comes down to just how good and how big you are. I mean, you can call the stunt you want. If you get blocked by a little running back, it's not going to work out. So I think the D-line is sometimes there's scapegoats as far as blaming the coaches because you can really only do so much if your guys just aren't getting past blocks, you know?
Yep. And Billy, I know you had some comments.
I would definitely agree with what you said, keeping Eric Washington and putting him on the front 7, because it has shown that he's been a great coach. But I think the defensive coordinator job was just a little too big for him. Yeah. And it showed we get a splash here and there of a good pass rush, but there's no consistency in the way that we play. The secondary is it's awful. You saw a little bit difference when Rivera took over, that we didn't allow points to get scored. We made some better plays. The coverage was different. So I think Eric Washington just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And if he can get our defensive line, our front seven, back to what it's been in the past years, maybe that pass rush comes back and the secondary, plays a different scheme, plays more man-to-man, and it looks a lot better in the last, 4 games.
And, I've seen other people, too, bring up already about, putting up crying faces and stuff, talking about we miss McDermott and gifts and all this. And I don't think it's, far-fetched to question, are we sure even McDermott would be making this work right now? Because, at some point, it's like Den said, you can call up anything you want, scheme-wise. And even if it's right, if the players don't execute it, then it doesn't necessarily fall on the coaches all the time. And I'm not saying that I think it was just the players. I think it's a mix of several things. I think age is caught up. I think that Don Terry post-signing has been a huge bust, and I think that's a big reason for it. Mario Addison is still having a good year despite what some people are saying. I think he has 8.5 sacks on the season now. So he's still on pace for his 11. Julius Peppers has taken a step back a little bit, I guess you would say, but he's also he's been thrown in and out more than they were hoping they were going to have to use him. And then, of course, they felt like they're going to have to rely on more blitzing this year, and really that's where the sacks have come from. And then off coverage, this and that. I think all that kind of plays into a big factor. Do I think Eric Washington was working out? No. Dan, I think y'all said this on your post-game show as well, and we all kind of felt the same that, maybe Ron taking over is a good thing. I know potentially a demotion for him to defensive coordinator wouldn't necessarily be bad either, but that's probably not realistic thinking.
Yeah, I've actually kind of joked that I'd rather see Ron be a defensive coordinator, just as far as how he affects the offensive side of the ball with time management and all that.
Right.
I don't know if that's a realistic thing that Ron would ever do.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know. I'm okay with him calling the defense if that's how they want, or if they want to tag team that defense between. I don't really know how that works when you kind of have now 2 defensive coordinators in a way.
Yep.
But the one thing that Jordan kind of was touching on was we're in this position though because the Panthers defense has been so good, and Sean McDermott got a head coaching job.
Yep.
Steve Wilkes got a head coaching job, and I hate to always bring up the Patriots, but one reason that they're so good is because they've had the same core guys forever.
Yep.
They've had Josh McDaniels, Bill Belichick, and then they had Patricia for so long. And this year, when you throw in Norv Turner, you throw in, Dave Tepper, even an owner, you throw in, Eric Washington, everything was new, and we were kind of hoping it would all mix.
Yep, Brady Hoke and Memore. All those guys.
So, yeah, so everything was new, and, continuity goes such a long way in the NFL, and I know they tried to hire within to help that. It just maybe come down to that they need different guys,
Yeah, and I think that's fair, and that's kind of Jordan. You were talking about Jordan was hitting on this stuff in the presser, and she really kind of nailed it there in a lot of aspects. And she actually put out a tweet too. She brought something up. Obviously the big thing right now is the report came out about Rivera potentially losing or not losing his job. I guess it's not exactly what it said, but David Tepper was getting frustrated with his old school ways and the lack of analytics in the franchise. And Jordan tweeted something today. I thought you may have seen this, Den, saying that the top 3 things David Tepper's always said he cares about with the Carolina Panthers is winning, winning, winning. But Jordan was struck by the fact, and before the Pittsburgh game, he said her biggest takeaway from that time, or Tepper's biggest takeaway, was the word patience with giving these things time. And I've been critical of some organizations hiring a coach, giving him a year, and then ousting him out the door because you're not building. You're coming in with guys and people that are already there, and you got to let them build. Now, Rivera has been here. He's not new. This has been going on for a while. He's good one season. He's bad one season, and it's been frustrating. I completely get that. Now this is probably the worst skid of the career with him. The first 2 years, everybody just it was frustrating, but everybody kind of gave him a break because he was new, and then it finally sprung to life in 2013 with the playoff bid. They took a step back, finally got to the playoffs in 2014 with a sketchy season. We all know what happened in 2015. But I thought that was I thought that was kind of something evident to say, because Rivera did say in his press conference today he talked to Tepper, and everything went great. And Tepper didn't influence any of these decisions.
Well, I think the biggest thing, and maybe this is something that Tepper might think too, is no one. This is the last thing we expected. When we went into that offseason, you pick up Dante Jackson, you pick up DJ Moore, Dontari Poe, and then Eric Reed, week whatever that was, 6-2. It's not like we were the Raiders at the beginning of the year. It was going well, and then what happened? And I think that when you start to put 4 losses in a row, you start looking everywhere, and I think that patience is one thing if you're kind of having a rocky road, but this is completely different than that. This is becoming embarrassing for, I'm sure, him,
yep,
as well as the fans. I mean, just one thing after another. And they've looked stupid doing it too.
Exactly.
It's not like, oh, our players are just not performing. It's, why are you going for a 2-point conversion when you just tied the game?
Mm-hmm.
It's, why are you wasting timeouts? Why are you letting up 52 points on prime time to my old team? It's not like they're playing good football and just losing. I mean, that'd be one thing. You have patience with something like that. But I think this is a little more aggravated and kind of knee-jerk reactionary losses that kind of test your patience.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And back to the, you can call anything and a player has to execute. When the players have not executed this year, it has been awful. It hasn't been just subpar. It has been atrocious. You can put just a little bit on the coaches, but the players, Cam having to call a timeout last week against Seattle because a player wants to do the tough guy shit. You got 2 timeouts wasted in a 2-minute drive to try to tie the game up this week. It's just, I don't know if the air has gone out of the team.
Well, yeah,
but it seems like their execution has gotten worse over these 4 games.
Right, and I think they were saying in the locker room that lack of discipline this year. Ryan Khalil actually said lack of discipline this year is what's killing them. And he looks at this roster and he thinks they're more talented than last year's 11-5 team, which I think who could disagree with that at this point after what Cam was dealt wide receiver-wise going into the playoffs with injuries. But he's right, but isn't discipline part of coaching? I mean, I feel like discipline's a huge part of coaching, and those boneheaded penalties. Now, some of these penalties are absolute garbage. The Dante Jackson thing was just trash, but, some of these things that have been messed up do fall on coaching. And yesterday's game, I know, like, Cam had a bad game, whatever. That's fine. But this team just looked flat. And I don't know,
yeah,
maybe we looked at that different because of the report coming out before the game. That could influence that a little bit. But this team just, it's like Dan said, it's embarrassing. Like, this team has so much better talent than what it is putting on the field right now. And it's just been, it's been a dumpster fire. And I think this past week, Billy and I have talked about it, Dan. Every week going into our preview show, we're like, except for maybe Seattle, we were like, this is a bounce back week. This is a bounce back week. This is a bounce back week. And it's like, no, we just keep getting worse and worse and worse. And then I think your floor, rock bottom, was losing to Tampa the way we did.
Yeah. And definitely.
Yeah, I said the Tampa loss is kind of your whole season. And I think that's the way that a lot of Panthers fans that were down in Tampa felt. And that's why this one was so tough. But, the other thing is, this Panthers team that is happening right now just lost at home. That's a big one. Like, we're not used to that.
Yeah.
So, and then the teams that they're losing to on the road, you could argue aren't great teams, great powerhouses this year. So I think that when you are doing so well at home and you can't travel, clearly can't play on the road. You could argue that Philly should have been a loss too. I think that's where it turns to coaching. It's like, okay, we have the same players here. What's the difference? And I don't know, man. Pete Prisco, I always say it, he picked this team to lose every road game, and we made fun of him. And now we're probably going to show up on, like, freezing cold takes or something, but whatever.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's kind of just, like you were saying, frustrating part of it. Maybe we should have expected a little bit of this. With all this turnover here, we were so happy about turnover. But the other frustrating part about this is, like, these reports come out and now Rivera's firing people. Like, no, dude, your playoff chances mathematically, no, they're not gone. But they just walked out the door in Tampa against a bad Tampa team with backup secondaries that we just lost to. and couldn't take advantage of, it just walked out the door. Now you want to start firing people to try to make a change to defense? No. If you do that like halfway through the season, we have a little bit more respect for you, and we see you're actually trying to make moves ahead of time. Now it just looks like you're reacting instead of being proactive.
And that's the thing that Tepper said in that article, or he was quoted as saying that he's been open with the coaches of how he feels. So the article came out, and that was known to the public. But how many weeks has Ron been in the office saying, hey, you got to get it together. You got to get it together. Now it comes out in public. Jordan, at the press conference, asked him a question. He gets really upset, and now he wants to fire people. Yep. He's known for probably a couple weeks. But when you talk about all the turnover and how we had to grow into it, we talked about this on our show, was that we had some growing pains because of all the new receivers and everything. That came together in a 6-2 start.
Yeah.
We were past all that.
Barely winning, but then we showed out for a couple games.
And now for some reason, we're taking a step back. So I think the growing pains ended, and I don't know. The execution is poor on the player's side, and some of the decisions, the 2-point conversion and Gano leaving so many points on the board this year, have really killed us, because at the end of it, what is it, 4 losses, 5 losses, less than a touchdown?
Yeah. We're
not getting blown out besides one game.
Yep.
It's close games, and that's when the coaching is the issue.
Yeah, game managing has been awful. Which this
I can tell you one thing. I don't really know where to place the blame, but the first 2 minutes of every road game has been a disaster.
Yeah.
Like, we're almost laughing in the stands because teams just march down the field. I mean, granted, in Pittsburgh they scored, but again, I think you could still say the first at least 2 possessions. But I mean, things couldn't have went worse in Tampa, and and even in Washington, and even in Philly. We're sitting there. Why can't this team come out of the gate? There's no urgency to score early. Everything is desperation, and then now the whole season's a desperation as far as you basically can't lose, and you're making these crazy changes. And I told Josh Klein today that here's what's going to happen: the Panthers are going to go into Cleveland, and they're probably going to win like 42-0, and everyone's going to be sucked back in and being like, "We're a playoff team," blah blah blah, because that's what Ron does. Is he's so confusing when his back's up against the wall. They're like a great team, but he can't put it together for the rest of the year.
And that's how I feel, and we were talking about it before the show, was that, we're going to lose, and we're going to lose, but the teams that we need to lose are going to continue to lose. Yeah. And it gives us just that hope, but we know it's just going to be crushed when we get to the end of the season and have to play the Saints. And that is definitely what a big win at the Browns is going to do to the fan base. And the realistic thing is we're going to get crushed at the end of the season if we don't execute. And that's what I'm ready for. I wish that we would just go ahead and lose and somebody would win, so you could just be done with it, up and down.
The weirder thing too is I said, watch this team go and lose in Cleveland but beat the Saints. Like they'll also do weird things like that. Like lose to the teams they shouldn't, and then when you count them out, they show up. So, and I mean, this team had a 17 crabs. I don't know.
Yeah, 17-point comeback in the fourth quarter against the Eagles. Like how I just don't see how you go from that super high to just the low of the low. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of brings up the next thing. Talking about playoffs, it's pretty evident, it seems anyway, and Rivera about said as much in the post game. Cam's shoulder was pretty sore after last week, and I feel like every time we go to Tampa, something's wrong with Cam's shoulder here lately. But he said after the game, Cam's shoulder was really sore then, and when this Hail Mary opportunity came up, the first one, I was like, why the hell isn't Taylor Heineke getting put it back in? And I was saying it here, Billy. Cam threw it, and he actually threw it further than I thought he would, but it was still well short. And then they had another opportunity, so then they bring in Heineke. I was like, oh, well, I see. Yeah, it's like, oh, I see Cam can't throw it that far now. I guess that shoulder's done. Let me pull him, and I'll put in Heineke. Like, why wasn't he in already? This game was pretty much over. I mean, I know you're playing for the playoff. Your season's on the line. I get that. But there's a lot more there with Cam. And, yes, the Panthers' playoff hopes are still alive, Den. But, I mean, is it worth – this has been a big topic of discussion on Twitter today, obviously. Is it worth chancing Cam Newton moving forward if, indeed, the shoulder is banged up pretty bad, which it does appear to be? I mean, he's going to go meet with doctors again this week. and they're going to report back. But is it worth it to you to chance Cam moving forward if his shoulder is in fact, pretty sore and in bad shape?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, do you risk your franchise quarterback, and now without Greg Olsen, and just with all these new coaches, and expect to win on the road? I mean, it'd be one thing if you were like had a chance at your division or something. It could have, you haven't won a road game,
Yep.
and now you're going into it risking your quarterback and with all these new coaches. So, I mean, you can't sit here and say, I think while they're mathematically alive, I'm not going to have a problem with them playing Cam.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to, right? I think once we'll see what happens in Cleveland, like, and especially tonight with the Redskins. If by next week at this time they actually have a wild card shot, I'm okay with that. But if one of those teams wins and it's looking even worse next week, I think you sit them. I do, and I think it all depends on the next two. Well, tonight and like I said, the next Sunday and Monday to kind of see where we're at. But I think Cam will play in Cleveland. As far as, I mean, it's when Ron talks, he talks like they're like in the lead in the wild card. I mean, the players haven't lost faith, and I mean, you could argue that some of them are kind of down. You saw Ryan Khalil and Thomas Davis at midfield the other day, but I don't know. I think they're still spirited to say, well, those teams are losing. All we need to do is get in the dance, as they say. And I think while you're not out yet, I'll let them play Cam another week, but I don't think it goes too much further beyond that if you don't get a good result.
Yeah, I could see him playing Cleveland unless something comes back just terrible about his shoulder. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him play in Cleveland. Would I necessarily agree with it? I don't know, because I mean, look, there is a chance. We can't eliminate the fact there is a chance that after these firings and Rivera taking over the defense, that like you said earlier, Carolina goes in there and just beats the Browns 42-0 and gets everybody excited, and this team turns it around. There is a slim chance that could happen. And honestly, I should probably knock on wood saying this, but it always begs the question: things can't get worse than what we just saw in Tampa, right? Well, they probably could, because we still only lost that game with 4 interceptions by 1 touchdown.
Yeah, four picks, a terrible PI call that I thought swung that game entirely.
Yeah, and
you had them on 1st and 20. I think that's a chance for the team to get some momentum. That killed them. But yeah, 4 picks. I mean, they were muffing punts. We're lucky to get a fumble on the goal line, and you're still in the game. I mean, we kind of saw that in Atlanta too, but not that bad. So it shows that the Panthers aren't a bad team. Like there's just so much going on at once, and the problem is it's all facets. It's special teams, it's defense, and it's offense. It's not like one player is playing bad. It's not like, oh, you put in a new quarterback and maybe you'll figure it out. No, it's a lot different than that, and the bad shows in a different way every week. That it kind of is hard with coaching, because you could point out, I don't know, 3-4 losses that really weren't because of coaching. Yeah. So it's tough.
And you kind of hit something. You were talking about fumbles. We got lucky in the Seahawks game too to recover. We had 5 fumbles in that game. Didn't lose one of them. Yeah. I mean, Thomas Davis said the exact same thing a week or two ago, saying, I just wish we could, if it were one thing we can pinpoint, this would be much easier. He said, but there's a lot of things going on right now that have to be fixed. And when that happens, that's typically a bad sign for the team as a whole, because it's not like you're going to fix that in 1 week. I mean, and a lot of it is the team shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, if we're being honest.
I miss the days of being able to just cuss at Worley. Like I'd have that back for some wins. To say that that's our bad spot.
Who was not having a bad season in Arizona, by the way.
Yeah, and that's the part about it, is it's all facets of football. And something's got to change. But as for the shoulder, if we're in mathematical contention, I think Ron, for his job, is going to make Cam play. Ron, I mean, he says he'll do it as player once, but Cam's never going to ask to come out.
Yeah.
And Ron's going to want to keep his job. And at that point, if you do pull him and we're in contention, do we think Heineke is good enough to win? the rest of the way at all, or even ready?
I mean, he showed some signs in the preseason. He can move with his legs, and he can bomb that ball, man.
Yeah, he can.
That Hail Mary had plenty of room the other day, so where Cam barely made the 20.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't think you can sit here and say you're positive, feeling positive with him at quarterback. So, I mean, the other part of it is there's a lot of people banged up on this team. I mean, Trey Turner came out of that game. You don't want to risk I think the question is, like, do you risk your future for probably barely making the playoffs and losing one game? Like, just being honest,
Oh yeah. And speaking of playoffs, guys, we're still in the hunt somehow. Mathematically, we're still there. So, a quick look at the playoff picture. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I think we all kind of agree that it's a long shot for this team, especially playing the Saints twice to end the year. I've always said, kind of what Den hit on earlier, just make it and anything can happen. I am a believer in that, but right now, even that looks slim. But in the wild card right now, the Panthers are chasing the Redskins and the Vikings. Essentially, is what this comes down to. The Vikings are sitting at 6-5-1. The Redskins are 6-5. Redskins lost Alex Smith for the season. They're playing Philadelphia. Actually, I think they're about to kick off now. And if they lose that game, that puts them tied with the Panthers. They do own the head-to-head against Carolina, so Carolina's going to have to win another game. And then them continue to lose would also be nice. But the Vikings are still ahead of Carolina in that aspect. They would jump up. They have that tie, so even if, I believe that's right, if they fall to 6-6-1, they're still, and Carolina goes up to 7-6, we'll own that tiebreaker at some point. I think that's right. Isn't that how that tie works, Den?
Yeah, I was going to say that tie might be a big factor going forward if, granted, we have to win. But I think the tie holds more water, right, than a loss, obviously.
Yeah, because that's how Carolina got into the playoffs in 2014.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I mean, and the grand scheme of thing is you look ahead at the games you have left. Carolina has the Saints twice. Yeah, we talk about this. It would be so Pantherish if Carolina goes and wins that game on Monday Night Football, and beats the Browns this week. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, that's going to shoot everybody right back to the top of the roof. But then you play Atlanta again at home, which we just haven't typically matched up well against them, but it is at home. And then you go on the road to New Orleans, which I think is just a killer to the season. So the chance is still there. I mean, the Redskins are probably going to lose a few games. The Vikings, they're inconsistent. Who knows? So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. I think after this week and tonight mainly, we'll know a little bit more. Den hit on it earlier. The Redskins win tonight. It really kind of pushes us even further back. If they lose, everybody's holding on to that thread of hope, I guess. But how about go ahead.
I was talking about it with Josh today. I mean, I think one of the other thing that and bless their hearts, the super optimistic Panthers fans that we're still going to make the playoffs, is if you look at the schedules of the team in there. So I was complaining about playing the last 4 out of 5 games of the season being NFC South, and I hate that teams play each other twice in 3 weeks, which is the Saints.
Yeah.
Philly and Washington have the same deal. They'll be playing each other again in a couple weeks. The Vikings closed the season at the Bears. So, I mean, there's a lot of, if you look ahead, we're in a tough position, but so are those other teams. So a couple wins in the next week or two could mean a lot. And looking at that, we do have Cleveland and Atlanta. So those Saints games, though, which will probably, if it comes down to the last game of the season, I don't know, man. I'm going to lose my mind.
Well, look, it gives them something to play harder for, I guess you would look at. But look, and that brings up something you said earlier too, Den. I think that's a pretty big emphasis right now. Regardless of where this team's at, these players are going to want to win. I mean, this isn't like they have something to play for. They're going to want to go out there and win. Cam, especially after last week, is going to want to go out there and win. And obviously, they've wanted to win the last 4 weeks. It hasn't been working out. They've been kicking themselves in the foot. There's been a lot of issues. But these guys want to win. It's not like they're going to cave in on this season. A lot of them still showing support for Ron Rivera. It's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. And Cleveland, is it a winnable game? Yeah. But I think out of the winnable games you had left going into Tampa last week, that was the most winnable. Yep. So we'll see how it unfolds.
The last few games I had, I said I have to go 3-1 in this stretch, and I actually circled the Browns game as the game they would probably lose.
Yep, same. Yep.
And now here I am, it being the only game they might win. So who knows with this team, man.
I thought Jeremy Igo had a pretty good tweet over at Carolina Huddle saying Cleveland. Panther fans, at least we have to play Cleveland next week. And then it was like Cleveland fans, at least we get to play Carolina next week. Thought that was like spot on. But let's talk about that matchup a little bit. The Browns moved on to a new offensive coordinator themselves back early in the season. The week of October 29th, I believe, is what it was. I looked up. And Baker Mayfield and that offense has been humming right along, which, of course, last week they kind of hit a hiccup. They were on the road against the Texans, which has a pretty good defense, as we know. So they're going to be looking to get right back into things. This is a scary matchup with a guy like Baker Mayfield then heading into this. Yeah, I mean,
you saw what happened with Jameis, man. I get worried with this team and mobile quarterbacks. It's especially with no pass rush. And the hardest thing, about the Browns right now is they're very unpredictable. They have kind of rolled out some new coordinator now, or fill-in, I guess you could say. And they're kind of playing with nothing to lose. I thought Tampa would be more of that yesterday. I said I won't be surprised if I see the Bucs start faking punts and doing weird stuff. And I think the Browns are a team that can do that as well. I mean, you've been seeing the last few weeks, OBJ and the Bears, people are throwing, receivers are throwing more. And I think the Browns are a team in that sense that can be very unconventional. And that's the last thing we need right now in Carolina. We can't even stop the conventional. So they worry me in that sense.
And maybe the game at the Texans for them this past week brought some of that confidence out of Baker Mayfield. Because 2 weeks ago, he was cocky and confident in his presser, talking about when they fired Hugh Jackson, that somebody was actually able to lead the team and call the right plays and make the right decisions. And they were flying high, scored a bunch of points. This week, hopefully it took some of that wind out of their sails, because this team with Baker that can run, and then you add Nick Chubb that is finally getting to get on the field, is scary when we haven't been able to tackle and we have no pass rush.
Yep. Baker, going into that Houston game last week, had only thrown two interceptions over the last 5 games, and has 7, 9, 11 touchdowns since Freddie Kitchens had taken over. That big completion percentage stat everybody talks about, he's right up there. His lowest was a 67 last week. Before that, with Freddie Kitchens, and his lowest was a 69, a 85, a 73 over those stretch of wins. But the thing is like his attempts dropped off. So it was just more effective game planning from Freddie Kitchens, and it's been working. And like Den said earlier, the mobile quarterbacks against the Panthers, especially one like Baker Mayfield, Jameis is, he's mobile, but he's not like Baker. Baker is much more agile. He can get around. And with Nick Chubb is averaging 20 yards a game, they traded out, I think it was Carlos Hyde, I believe it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They traded him out into Jacksonville earlier this season as well, and put Nick Chubb in there, and he's done well. So now you've got another running attack you have to worry about. They got Jarvis Landry. They got the tight end David Njoku in his second year, who's been doing pretty good. And Panthers don't match up well against tight end guys. We talked about it all season.
And that's one thing. The Texans took him away yesterday.
Yeah.
It was the biggest thing. I think he had 6 yards.
Well, that's that front seven for you.
He had 8 yards. 3 catches for 8 yards.
Whew. Yeah, maybe we can do something like that.
One crazy thing about the Browns, as far as something to kind of worry about with the Panthers secondary, yesterday Baker threw it to 10 different receivers.
Oh.
So even though they have Jarvis Landry, Jarvis had led the team with 6 catches. And they're spreading the ball around to Landry, Callaway, Higgins, Chubb. I won't go through all of them. Perriman even in there, and Njoku, like you mentioned, Duke Johnson. So they're a team that you can't single out one guy, and we've kind of seen that. We see that in Atlanta. We can take away Julio, but when you got people like Ridley and Sanu and the tight end, the Hooper, and then you get the 2 backs, I think this is a similar thing to be worried about if you just look at these stats. He's, I think, eight receivers last game. Yeah. There really isn't a clear-cut number one on the Browns, and I think that could be something to look into with Ron's new controlled secondary.
Yeah, and that is a kind of scary stat you bring up. I don't know, Baker Mayfield just worries me in this whole situation. But we talk about this, but NFL Matchup on ESPN actually put out a fun Twitter account, by the way. They put up some really cool stats, a really good show as well. But they put up a stat today showing the Browns offense has the 5th highest percentage of 3-and-outs this season, only trailing the Cardinals, Bills, Jets, and Dolphins. That's some bad company. I wish I had that song queued up right now. That'd have been a perfect.
I figured we might be somewhere in there. No.
Yeah, you would think, but we weren't. We weren't in the top 10. I was looking for us, or the top 5. Excuse me. They only showed the 5 worst, the top 10 best.
We were in 6th place probably.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where we're always in the middle somewhere.
5th,
yeah, we're always in the middle somewhere. Every time I look at like a stat, I really want to see where we're at. It's like the top 10 best. Well, we're not there, and we're not in the worst. So I'm like, oh, so we're probably like the 6th worst. You know?
Well, we're always in the middle at 192, and 1.
Yeah.
Over his. So yes, it's
fitting.
It's fitting.
Yeah. So maybe there is, and I don't know how much of that came before or after Freddie Kitchens has taken over with this offense. That also plays a factor. That's some of these things. But another part going into this Browns defense isn't bad, guys. And the Panthers offensive line, after what many would call a pretty damn good start considering what we thought we were working with going into the season, has really started to collapse lately. And I think heavy blitzing against them has been one big cause, which has always seemed to kill the Panthers. Of course, offensive line always seems to be an issue with Carolina. But Myles Garrett's coming in here, Den, or not coming in here. We're going to them, but that's going to be something to have to look at too. I mean, this Browns defense isn't terrible.
You got a whole slew of guys coming. You got Jabril Peppers, you got Emmanuel Ogbah, you got Myles Garrett. At the beginning of the season, I thought that they were going to get my what's his name, Khalil Mack.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, this is over. And but you know, one of the crazy stats that came out today, I don't know if you saw that, was that Cam is actually doing worse with more time.
Huh.
As far as passer rating, he's in the last 4 games he's averaged. It might not seem like it, but over almost 3 seconds per pass, and his stats are completely dropped off the table from being less than that. But yeah, I mean, you got like I said, a whole slew of guys over there, and they're all making tackles too. It's not like a Panthers situation where you got 1 or 2 guys. Shout out to Obata, by the way. He's the only one balling out on the line right now. He's the most exciting one to watch, at least.
Yeah, and I'm sure.
So that stat.
Well, I was going to say they even have Jamie Collins back there too. I don't know if I mentioned him. I know him pretty well from being here in Boston.
Yeah, I was going to say the Patriot days, right?
So that stat is his completion rate goes down when he has more than 3 seconds?
Yeah, that came out today. I forget who tweeted it. You can find it on Twitter.
That makes sense.
That's just in the last 4 games, though.
He's probably passing more than 10 to 12 yards, and his accuracy with that shoulder has gone down tremendously. If you're passing, a lot of our passes are 3 yards, and then it's just
there is intermediate, but the deep shots we've talked about all season haven't been there. And I've been saying it for about a month now. I really feel like this has been an issue, and it was really kind of brought to light in the Giants game when they pulled him for Heineke to go in there and throw that bomb, which was fine, whatever. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal, but his velocity hasn't been there all season. I've seen that. You're watching it. There are throws on out routes and stuff that just haven't been Cam-esque, where he's getting it in there with the receiver having plenty of time to cut up field instead of getting swarm tackled. So, I mean, yeah, I still feel like that's part of the issue there. But speaking of Cam, heading into Tampa, this is as of last week. This is more NFL matchup stats. Cam was ranked at 8th best and lowest sack rate per NFL matchup, which is kind of hits right where Den was just saying. He's averaging 3 seconds. His accuracy may be down in that with that stat or whatnot, but time has been there. We can't sit here and pretend like this offensive line has been in shambles. Chris Clark has struggled, for the latter part of this season after coming here, and I expect again Myles Garrett to line up against him several times in this game. But Cam has held onto the ball too long at times, and I like people don't want to admit that, and that's fine. And he's taking some sacks he doesn't need to take. But, I mean, he has had time at times, and this stat shows it in some aspects. Yes, some of it is Cam quick passes, getting the ball out, Cam making things happen with his legs. Yes, absolutely. He covers up a lot of things that some pocket QBs don't get to cover up because they're not as mobile. I get that. And Cam, no, I'm not saying Cam isn't a pocket QB, guys. So everybody just calm down a second, because I know there's people out there that would jump on you in a heartbeat. But he's also 8th best in the league converting third downs, which is pretty. This one kind of surprised me a little bit because I didn't feel like that was I don't know. I guess when he's targeting Jarius Wright, I felt like that. But then, does that feel right to you? The third down conversion stat?
The third down thing? Yeah, I mean, they missed the third down, Jarius Wright. I think it's actually been more. I mean, we've seen turnovers. We've seen them. I'm actually surprised by that stat now that I think about it, because I don't know why we start every game with the RPO to Christian McCaffrey. It's almost like a wasted play. It just doesn't work on the first play of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think that there's a lot of yak going, and I don't know. I think that once you get into the red zone lately, maybe that's where those third downs are getting up, because they're not putting the ball in the end zone. So
yeah,
sometimes those things that you got to look at the context. Like Billy was saying, he's having more time to pass the ball, but it's probably because he's passing the ball more now, playing from behind in the last 4 games.
Right.
So that obviously makes sense. But if you just look at the stats, then no. So I wonder if that wasn't always the case this year. You know what I'm saying? I wonder if that's a new thing, that he's actually converting more third downs or more or less than he was in the beginning of the year, because we had a quarterback who was once the best in the red zone.
Yep.
And now he's pretty bad. I mean, it's not Cam, but offensively they're pretty bad. So
and
I think those stats are really changing.
Something, I think it was Steven with the new guy for 24/7 Sports brought up something on Twitter that actually kind of made some sense to me. Speaking of like this kind of roster change up with injuries earlier in the year in the red zone, I don't know if you saw it, Den, but he was talking about the personnel earlier in the season was Devin Funchess and Torrey Smith in more in those red zone opportunities, and that is when the red zone was thriving. Of course, now there was the 2-game stretch where DJ Moore started getting implemented more when Funchess was still healthy and Torrey Smith went out. But he's not wrong. I mean, that was an increase, but I feel like it still goes back to me, like some of this in the red zone has been the play calling over the last few weeks, because the creativity, like you don't have to run Christian McCaffrey straight up the middle. And I know you hate this because I've heard you preach on it for a while. But you don't have to run Christian McCaffrey right up the middle, but you can get creative with these misdirection pre-snap motions that you use getting down the field and them still be effective, getting the defense going one way and going the other, instead of a jumbo set, let's run Christian McCaffrey on the B gap and hope it works. Like, no, stick to the creativity, these reverses or, these counter plays and stuff, the misdirection pre-snap motions I was just talking about. Use them more in the red zone. And I mean, I don't want to knock on Norv too much, because I think he's done great for this offense this year, especially if it comes out that Cam's shoulder has been affecting him a lot this year. But I felt like that's been a lot of the issues with the red zone play calling.
Well, one of the things, and this was actually brought to my attention, and it's without the defense getting turnovers, the Panthers have most of this year have had a very long field.
Mm-hmm.
And you start seeing successful plays, but it's taking them way more plays than we're used to seeing to score. So it's like we're seeing that big reverse, like on the 50-yard line, and they've almost like run out of plays by the time they get down to the end zone. And it's just like it's very predictable. They've seen some version of what you're doing.
Yep.
And I think that is a big part of it is not giving Cam and Co short fields like we saw in 2015. I mean, how many times did the offense start with the ball in the opposing 30 or something?
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way. And you mentioned Torrey Smith, man. I mean, he was a huge part in that Washington game. He caught a bunch of balls in the red zone to get down there.
And the
caught
Philly
a touchdown,
game.
caught a 2-point conversion. So I don't really mind that. It's just, where is that lately? It seems like DJ and Curtis aren't. I don't know. Maybe you do need the veterans down there, and less veterans just to get down there.
And I know you were at the game, Den, but you may have noticed, I know Billy and I talked about it, you may have noticed towards the end of that Tampa Bay game, Torrey Smith's reps went up. Pretty much. I mean, he was in on several of those drives and different plays in the game, getting snaps and reps late in the game when they were trying to make that comeback. And something you just hit on talking about, it's almost like they've wasted too many plays. I've said the same exact thing to Billy watching games. It's like, you can only do so many things with this stuff. And it's frustrating to get down there and then be like, okay, well, what are they going to pull out next? And then it's a run straight up the middle with McCaffrey. Like, I've been one of the biggest guys defending McCaffrey as an every down back running through the tackles, but that's not what I mean when I say that. I'm talking about like you said early in those drives, and you're seeing these plays, the read options sometimes, yes, these trap plays, these zone running plays that are working. And, last week, of course, it was against a defense that's one of the worst against the run. And Tampa, I mean, he was gouging them. But you're getting down so much in points and coming from behind that you can't stick with that game plan. And that's also a big issue. If your defense isn't able to get stops, and, of course, you're turning the ball over like you did last week, but if your defense isn't able to get stops and the other team's scoring and you're getting down two scores at a time, that completely – Carolina's not built for that. I mean, yeah, we did it against Philadelphia. That's not our style, though.
I mean, we're never a play from behind team. I was walking into the stadium. One of the reasons I don't really buy too much into the Atlanta blew a 25-point lead thing is because the Panthers almost blew a worse lead in 2015, barely getting out of that Seattle game. And that's just how this team is. And in 2018, we have not ever had been ahead like that. It's always been a close game. It's always been you're down two scores with 10 minutes left, and they're just not built for that. They're not a quick score team like that. And
that's it. This past week when we went down early, I checked out for probably a good 10 minutes. I was playing games on my phone. I didn't really care to watch it because I knew at this point we're not built for that. Same thing with the Seattle game or the Pittsburgh game. We get down super early. I checked out of that one pretty early. Because I know what this team is capable of, and if we don't have a lead, we are burnt toast.
Yeah. Right now the Eagles are up 7-0 on the Redskins for those really holding on to those playoff hopes. And I'd be lying if I said I'm not somewhat holding on to it because I hate to see this team go 6-10. I want it for the players, but in reality I don't. I don't know. I don't care about the draft pick at this point because you're still going to be somewhere in the middle there, even if you finish 6-10. I'd like to see this team have a chance to make up for some stuff in the playoffs, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm back and forth.
But back to and I'm just thinking, off the top of my head, with DJ Moore and them, I feel like the touchdowns have been longer when we have scored. We haven't been. I mean, we do stall in the red zone, but it's been big plays compared to when we had Funchess, where we're little chunk, getting to the red zone and then stalling. So that could be the difference in that stat if you actually look at it deeper.
Yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the draft there, Tripp. I think one of the non-settling things is this team really needs a D end.
Yeah.
And unless you're picking, I'd say top 10, 15, you're not getting one of the premier guys. So that might be something, I don't know, that would have to come from a trading or a signing. Yeah. I don't think the player the Panthers really need is in their draft reach. So that's what makes things a little more complicated when people start saying, plan for the draft. It's like, who are you going to pick literally mid-round? You don't even know half the time.
Exactly.
It's weird.
That's definitely the thing with defensive ends coming into the NFL. If you're not at least like you said, top 10, you're not going to get the elite guy that comes in and is impactful right away. And with defensive ends in the NFL, it typically takes longer to adjust. And, that's why a lot of people like picking defensive ends in the second and third rounds, because if you pick one in the first and he doesn't do anything the first year, it's like, oh, he's a bust. Everybody starts talking about this. And there's typically only those elite guys like a Myles Garrett or Jadeveon Clowney, for instance, that go in the first round that actually are impactful immediately. And, everybody keeps talking about defensive end, and I completely agree that's an issue. Left tackle and the offensive line is still a huge question mark. And if, who knows if we would have taken, who was it, Isaiah Flynn or Wynn this year?
The Pats moved up there. I honestly, when he was still on the board, I was like, maybe they should take Isaiah Wynn. Granted, he got hurt. Obviously, you can't predict that. And then the Patriots slide in there. And I always wonder if that made that DJ Moore pick a little easier or if they would have just gone DJ anyway. I know Norv loved him, but you're right. But the good thing about offensive linemen is you can find them.
Yep.
Josh, we were talking about just letting the rookies play the rest of the year, putting in Brendan Mann in there, and taking your chances. You can't get much worse than right now.
Yep. So
why not try to play out the future? I mean, even Devin Funchess, I don't see him back on the Panthers next year. Do you pull some snaps from him going forward?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And Jeremy McKinney on Facebook Live kind of ringing that as well in the comments, saying the bottom line is we need to see what we have in our young guys so they can get some reps. And that's absolutely true, especially if we end up getting eliminated. I mean, obviously, I don't think we're going to see that next week because they're still in playoff contention. And technically, all this kind of plays into the fact, Ron, we talked about, David Tepper saying patience with Jordan Rodriguez, and that Joe Person actually tweeted out that the sense in the building is Ron Rivera and Marty Herney are safe if they can pull out another win or two this season, or if they just train wreck it, it might be a different story. But, they're still playing for something. They're still playing for their jobs right now to hang on for another year, or Rivera is anyway. So that's going to play a factor in all of how this stuff shakes out too. I don't think Ron's just going to go in there and start sitting people with his job on the line and doing some things like that. But you bring up Brendan Mann, that's a good point. Taylor Moton's an excellent point of that. Got him in the second round with a second-round pick, and he has been – we've all been wanted to see him in earlier.
This season, yeah.
Yeah, we all wanted to see him earlier last year. We liked the idea of him at right tackle. Darrell Williams goes down. Again, it seems like that's a trend with Rivera too. Vet player goes down. Young guy comes up and does better and is implemented. But he goes into right tackle, and he's doing great. Now – we're all begging for like Matt Khalil to come back, which is just sad. So
I forgot he's even on the team at this point.
Yeah,
we thought that was bad, and we thought Remmer's even. It's like that was the least of our concerns back then. It's a lot more than that, and the problem with the young guys too, like you mentioned. I mean, you got people like Ryan Khalil. I'll even throw TD out there. I mean, Mike Adams. These guys are taking spots of people. I mean, I'll throw out Galden out there again. I mean, I know he's had a couple mistakes, but at this point,
yeah,
I'd rather see what these young guys have than if you watch that Dante Jackson at PI. I think I put up a video of it. Mike Adams is I don't know. I know he's a veteran. I know he's played well, and he had a couple picks this year. But when you start talking about the vets that are out there, that you don't know of, there's uncertainty in their future. And you have young guns under them, why not, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's panned out in other opportunities. Like I said, Taylor Moton. There was, of course, Andrew Norwell back in 2014 was the same way. That same thing happened, and that's what switched that whole offensive line around from being just terrible in 2014 to start the year. Injuries piled up. They put in some new guys, and then boom, it took off, and they started scoring a bunch of points. Run game improved, pass game improved. And was finally able to help, catch up with a defense that was playing well, which, again, I've always said it feels like with Carolina, Billy, that the offense is playing pretty well. The defense can't get it together. The defense is playing great. The offense has struggled. It's frustrating.
And it's never been that way. It's always been the offense is awful if they're bad.
Yeah.
And the defense is going to be the one that gets us a turnover to win the game.
Yeah, awful strong. But
this year, the offense has been pretty bad.
Well, like I said, I mean, I think that we've been spoiled with a really good defense, and that's why they're in the position they are with Washington now. I mean, it's that they've been such a good defense that people have gotten promoted because of how good they were. Yeah. So I kind of feel for the organization in that sense, and I don't know. Like you said, we haven't talked about a bad defense in a long time. It feels weird when you see people like Luke Kuechly running around out there, and Eric Reed and Julius Peppers, and calling them a bad defense.
Yeah, I know, it sucks. That's why I hate it. I keep every time we get to talking about it, it starts like dawning back on me. I'm like, why am I sitting here having to talk about this? Like, this is ridiculous. But at this point, it is what it is. And I think, early in the season we could sit here and say, well, we're not sure exactly what we have, but the fact is they've only gotten worse. Maybe they improve. Who knows? I mean, still 4 games left to play, so we'll see what happens. But Den, we're coming up on the hour. Got 2 segments real quick. We got the predictions, but first our bounce back of the week. What Den, what are you picking for your bounce back of the week with the Panthers? Defense, offense, special teams, it doesn't matter. What would you pick?
I mean, I'll take the easy one. I think you got to see a bounce back from Cam. I mean, this team moves as Cam does, and as much as the term Bobby uses, we Panthers Nation, if you will, hates for Cam, and we never say he had a bad game. I mean, he's a big part of the reason why the Panthers lost that game.
Yep. And
he knows he's better than that. And I just want to see Cam Newton back. So Cam Newton that's not afraid to run on third down. And he seems a little hesitant to run. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah, And you look at it, 2 weeks ago he had one rush, and then he comes out and he runs for a bunch of yards, and then last week he doesn't do it again. I don't know if the shoulder is actually an issue. Taking a hit or going to the ground hard when he is running could be the reason that he's scared to do it.
Well, last week when he dove out for that first down, he landed. He had his right arm extended and landed on that shoulder awkwardly, and he came up and he was noticeably grimacing. I mean, I've talked about it all week, but it was very clear he was ailing from it. And I wonder if that's not really what sent the soreness over the top from that game. Not necessarily throwing, but just that combined with the throwing and that landing may have done it. Because you land hard like that on your side and you're extending your arm out, you can really jam up that shoulder pretty good.
He's had plenty of chances to reel off 10, 15, 20 yards and plenty of time to get away from the pocket, and he just hasn't done it. He takes a sack or he throws a bad ball. And I think the shoulder is playing a bigger factor than the Panthers want us to know.
And here's a good comment for you, Den. Robert Friel on Facebook Live said, Ron didn't throw the 7 interceptions in this 4-game losing streak.
Exactly.
Blaming
a lot of them aren't really his fault. I ripped them apart, though. 3rd and 17 on your own 10-yard line. You can't force a ball short of the sticks into double or triple coverage to DJ Moore.
Yeah, and
you can't do it. You take the sack and you move on,
Yeah, and Cam admitted as much. Look, and I've said it. Look, this Tampa game is on Cam. Some people are arguing the offensive line, this and that. That's fine. Yes, they've struggled at times. Cam made terrible decisions in that Tampa Bay game that cost them the game, even though they still had a chance late in it. Yes, the games before that, I'm not going to sit here and put it solely on Cam. And I'm not going to put the Tampa Bay games solely on Cam, but he was a large part in that game versus other games I would say he is not.
It's easier to put more on him when you look at 4 possessions down by a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's the part that kills you the most, is at the end of the game we had 4 possessions and we didn't score. That's where I put it on Cam at the end of the game.
I mean, you had picks down, within the 30-yard line or so. You had a pick backed up on your own goal line. I just think at that time you need to make better decisions. Whether it was a tipped ball or a great play by the defender, like Kean Fahey has his interceptable passes. That's fine if they weren't technically his fault.
Right.
But a lot of times just where he was going with the ball, I wasn't a huge fan of.
Yeah, same. And, one of those picks, his arm was hit while he was throwing, which that's the reason for that one, really. But, I completely agree. Billy, your bounce back. I doubled down on Cam there, by the way, with you, Den, because that was going to be my pick. So I'm doubling down with you. Billy, what do you got?
I'll go with Dante Jackson in the secondary again.
That's fair.
You guys are going Cam. I'll be different. I think the secondary has to get better, and they have to have a bounce back.
Yeah, and Jackson did struggle against Godwin some in that game. I mean, he got burned on the slant. Of course, some of that, I really wonder about the off coverage, especially with Dante and his speed. But, I mean, he didn't have his greatest first game back from that injury, and I wonder how much that played a factor, if at all. We'll see how he bounces back there.
Yeah, the secondary was actually my honorable mention. Sorry to hop in there. But the one thing that's weird about it is you got 2 real young guys with 2 savvy vets behind them, and I just think the communication there is off.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that Ron can fix.
And you can see that pre-snap a lot. There's a lot of confusion getting set up. And there's times when I'm just like, they're going to go over the top. They're going to kill us. And it's because there's so much, everybody's looking around. No one knows where they're supposed to go. And that's, once again, coaching.
Yeah, and that brings up something else want to hit on right quick, too, that I didn't. Rivera brought up the 2 timeouts back-to-back on that last drive, one of those final drives being both called by Cam Newton. One was for miscommunication and blocking assignment confusion, which I feel like, kind of falls on players, but it kind of falls on coaching, too, and maybe preparedness. And I can't remember what the other reason was. Den, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay.
The other one was the play clock running down low.
Yeah, the play clock, which is staple.
You mean in the Tampa game?
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Oh, I thought you were talking about just overall.
No.
One of them there's some kind of problem with not getting the play in.
Yeah.
And apparently blocking assignments are really misunderstood lining up.
Yeah. And I feel like that comes back to, that's kind of on coaching at this point. It's not like you got new players in there in this offensive line. They've been playing together for a little while now this season. I mean, but who knows? I could be pointing at that because of this damn report. But that's just naturally that's what I would point to. But if that's indeed another issue, like you said, the play clock thing has just always been, ever since Rivera and Cam have been here, has been an issue. So let's jump into predictions. Billy, what you got?
This week, I am going to say that our playoffs are dead, and I'm going to say that we lose 24-16 to the Browns.
Okay. Oh, I too. I think. Or Dan, what do you got? Go ahead. What's your prediction?
Generally, I would pick something similar to Billy, but like I said, this Panthers team, whenever you count them out, just blows your mind. And I'm using that logic. I just think that there's a lot of changes going on. Might have helped some morale. Obviously, can't get much worse. I think there's a lot of people are counting us out now, in the locker room. And I think the Panthers are just going to surprise everyone and win this game big. And just in this game alone.
Right.
And then we get back to the NFC South games, and I think you might see something like we've been seeing in one or two of those games. But I think for this Browns game, they're going to do something weird, and they're going to win, I'd say by 2 touchdowns.
Oh.
Do you need a score? I haven't really thought of the score.
Yeah, well, you say 2 touchdowns. I'll take that.
I'll say 31-17. That's close enough, right?
Yeah,
How's that?
That's a good bounce
That's
back
not
week.
Over the season, I've been the one to I haven't picked the Panthers.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't picked the Panthers in a lot of games, so I've been right on our losses. They haven't surprised me yet. That's the reason I feel comfortable going with this one as a loss.
And then you just said that you feel like this is the game that the Panthers are just going to surprise everybody. Well, I picked that the last 4 damn weeks, so I'm over that. I'm not going to be doing that. I just can't do it again. And if it takes me picking against the Panthers for them to win a game, so damn be it. But I think I just feel like these weapons are going to be too much. The defense, the way it's played, who knows? With, like you said, their backs against the wall, the reports coming out about the coaching, if they really like this staff and what they have, and Ron calling plays now, who knows what happens? I mean, I don't see Cam coming out and throwing 4 more picks this game, personally. And I think that's going to be a big help. But I got to go with the Browns. And I'm going to say 27-20.
And just to rephrase that, I want to pick the Browns, and I normally would pick the Browns.
Right.
But I think the Panthers are going to blow my mind. So I'll stick with that to debate with you guys at least, if anything.
Yeah, somebody's got to pick Carolina.
Somebody's got to be the skip, right? That's what me and Bobby always say.
Yeah, you're the lone wolf, I guess, as the game day morning guys would say. But Den, y'all have been doing great work over there with the Riot Report and all. You and the Keep PounDEN guys, Bobby and Chris, absolutely killing it. The Where's Waldo, Where's the Pass Interference thing, by the way, was fantastic. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I had to do that one.
Yeah, that was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, look, give a shout-out where they can find all y'all stuff. And I'm sure the majority of these listeners here are already watching y'all and listening to you and tuned into the Riot Report. But for those who might not be, definitely check these guys out. Where can they find y'all?
Yeah, it's at Keep PounDEN on all the social networks, and we're over on the Riot Report. We do something pretty similar to you, Tripp. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube each week, and you kill it with the lives. I'm always kind of jealous with your show, so that's what made us get back into doing the live stuff.
Oh,
and
shit.
we're on the road. So
I was
with
the
Riot Report. What's
yeah.
up?
I was gonna say I'm not doing anything like you guys. You guys are on the road. you got Kevin Catchy over there is getting all this killer work and stuff. And
he does. Yeah, it's fun traveling with those guys, man. Every weekend is every Monday, I should say, is I have an argument with my body about doing these trips. But these guys are real fun to hang with, and we have a lot of fun. So we just want to see some more wins going forward. That's all.
Oh yeah, definitely. If we could get back to that anytime soon, that would be great. And that's what really sucks for y'all. You kind of hit on it to begin the show. Is like, this is your first year really going on the road and attacking all this media and digital content coverage that y'all have been creating and doing so well at. And it's like, why, Carolina? Why?
Well, the cool thing about doing that is, during the game we do a lot of work. We do we do graphics and all that, and the worst part about it that I say is that we have to create jinx-worthy content. Like when the Panthers are on the, in the red zone, we're making a graphics that's, say 7-0 or 3-0, just so that it's ready.
Right.
And then it's like a pick six, and you're like, oh, okay. So it keeps you busy, and I think you kind of lose the fan part of you because you're working, and I think there's still a lot to talk about when they're losing like this. So, and that bright side, sports radio doesn't really exist as well when you go 18-0 versus having to battle into the playoffs with coaches being fired. So that part of it, keeps us afloat. So I guess we embrace it sometimes.
And we're not to the extent of you going to the games, but I feel like this is our second year doing the show, and the way that I watch a game is different. And it does take a little bit of the fandom out because you're remembering the stats and what happened a lot more than if you're just watching for a win. But it makes it a lot fun.
Yeah,
it's true. And up in that press box, those guys can't make a peep either. That's very, very professional environment up there for that. I'm not up there, but
yeah,
just to put it into perspective, it does become a different animal, and it's fun though.
Yeah, I can tell you, I would, as much as I would love to go up there and experience it one time, it would not go over well, I imagine. I'd be up there like looking for IPAs, some pizza, and raising hell every time something didn't go.
Don't get me wrong, that happens too. That's why I need to go to bed in 2 seconds.
Right. All right, man. Well, y'all be sure to like and follow us right here on Facebook if you haven't already. On Twitter, go like Keep PounDEN, The Riot Report, all those guys, Roaring Riot as well. That's all tag teamed up there. And subscribe to us if you're on YouTube. Like I said, check them out. For Panther Source Live show and preview this week, I'm Tripp Morgan.
I'm Billy Harless.
He's also Den over there, by the way. Y'all keep pounding. We'll see you after the game on Sunday, I guess. Hopefully talking about that blowout win that Den predicted.
Please.